Discover the incredible transformation. This black worker made after hours. The CEO was shocked. Marcus scrubbed the floors in the glossy law firm, rarely raising his head to catch a glimpse of the powerful attorneys who barely acknowledged his presence. A broom in his hand felt like a cage, trapping him beneath a weight of economic inequality and scrutiny. He wished they could see him for more than just a janitor, but the feeling persisted, his worth reduced to the sheen of the polished tiles he meticulously maintained. Yet each night, after the empty offices became silent, he transformed. Under the dim glow of his laptop, he dove deeply into online legal courses. A dream ignited in him, one that felt just out of reach, but was solidified by memories of his late grandmother's struggle for civil rights, her voice echoing in his mind. "You fight for what's right, Marcus." As he opened up to his family during dinner, his mother and sister leaned in with a mix of encouragement and concern. They believed in his potential, but also seemed burdened with the safety of the ordinary path. Could he really step out of his place? Doubts seeped into Marcus's mind during moments of quiet. What if he'd be caught in a web of ambition that could ultimately lead to disappointment? Could he genuinely disrupt the status quo? Suppose his proposal, designed to enhance diversity initiatives at the firm, could lead to sweeping change. That thought hung in the air, but it was married to the fear of the unknown. He felt the weight of skepticism in the air as he stood before the board members, voices swirling, a significant moment that turned his heart to ice. Eyes narrowed, doubts settled around him, thick as smoke. What should have been a proud occasion morphed into an urgent confrontation with their dismissive attitudes, a painful reminder of the prejudice he faced daily. Suddenly, he was just a janitor in a suit, fragile and small. He stormed out of the boardroom, his hands shaking as doubts clawed at him, revealing the rawness of institutional barriers meant to keep him marginalized. With that nagging thought reverberating through his mind, he overheard a whisper of connection to his grandmother's past, a painful injury done in the name of their firm. He reeled, feeling the ground shift beneath him, questioning not just the absurdity of his situation, but his own self-worth. Was he merely a relic of an unchangeable system? Just when the glimmer of acceptance seemed possible, that familiarity with prejudice blindsided him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Defeated yet determined, he decided to return with a voice that was not only firm, but also intimately linked to those painful truths, the myriad of injustices that he had lived through. As he peered at the polished table where the partners sat, he knew this was not just about his role anymore. No, this was a fight for good, a confrontation with history itself. Clenching his fists, heart racing against the clock, he felt the weight of his family's encouragement pressing against his ability to reclaim his identity. Would he finally gain the respect he craved? Could the ordinary janitor truly challenge the paradigm? The silence before he began to speak felt like a storm brewing, and in that tension, the stakes only escalated, twinging at his rawest fears, leaving both him and the audience on edge for what would come next. Marcus took a deep breath, orienting himself to the moment that could change everything. The mahogany table gleamed like an altar, the partners seated around it wielding the power that he both revered and resented. "You think I'm here to discuss cleaning supplies?" he began, his voice steady, surprising even himself. "I'm here to offer more than just my time spent in a suit. I'm here to propose a shift within this firm, a vital shift." Faces turned, curiosity overshadowing their initial condescension. His mind raced through the hours of research, course material, and his late grandmother's wisdom, sharpening his clarity. He spoke not just of diversity initiatives, but of the repercussions of their choices, how the firm's legal decisions had further marginalized voices like his. He shared the stories he'd been late to grasp, relaying how institutional policies, once veiled in sophistication, had perpetuated cycles of discrimination. As he articulated his vision for a structural overhaul, each word felt like a chisel, breaking away the stone of indifference that had long encased their perception. He detailed concrete steps, mentorship programs for underrepresented law students, diversifying the firm's recruiting strategies and advocating for policies that served broader communities. The room began to shift. A whisper of intrigue began to weave through the corporate armor that usually defined their interactions. Diversity isn't just a trend, he pressed on. It's a necessary framework that shapes not only the firm, but the legal landscape of our society. You have the means to influence change. Why not start here? As he spoke, Marcus felt a new energy flow through him, a surge of purpose washing away doubts. Yet as he met the faces of the partners, a familiar flicker of skepticism tugged at the edges of his confidence. Discomfort twisted in the air. Was it hope or resistance? Then a heavy-set partner, his brow furrowed with skepticism, leaned forward. "And what makes you think anyone will care about our diversity when we have billable hours to meet?" The challenge reverberated, igniting a spark in Marcus. He reminded himself that moments like this were precisely what he had fought for, the reckoning. Because building an inclusive environment elevates our collective success, engaging more voices means bringing innovative solutions to the table, he shot back, his voice gaining strength. Today's clients don't just want a successful outcome. They demand transparency and ethical representation. It's our responsibility to meet that demand. The silence that followed bore the weight of consideration, yet he still felt the threads of doubt seeking to ensnare him. You'll have resistance from within. It's never easy to challenge entrenched mindsets. He could feel the dismissive glances already calculating their next move, positioning against change. "I understand that," Marcus replied firmly, heart thumping like a drum in his chest. "But I also know the voices of people like my grandmother, who fought against a system that seemed immutable. It's time we honor that struggle by ensuring others don't face the same battles we did." The tension in the room shifted again. He could see more than skepticism now. There was curiosity sparking in their eyes. For the first time, he felt them truly looking at him, not just as a janitor, but as a contributor of value and change. As the discussion deepened, Marcus realized something astonishing. This wasn't just a fight for acceptance, but a reclamation of identity he had long hidden from himself. Each argument he made laid the framework for not just policy change, but personal affirmation. He asked himself if he could withstand the pressures of doubt that might still arise, uncertain what obstacles lay ahead. But now, armed with purpose, the answers became clearer. Then as the discussions began to wrap up, a subtle tension hung in the air, the partners reminded of their own limitations, his voice leaving traces of potential transformation as they considered his ideas. The weight of their history bore down on them, just like the expectations that tied him to the floor. Would they accept or reject this call to action? As he exited the boardroom, questions swirled within him. Had they seen him yet, or was this only the beginning? The path ahead was murky, but he was certain of this. The moment of change was upon him. The question was, how far would he go to seize it? In the days following Marcus's meeting, uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud over him as he navigated through the daily grind of the firm. Whispers trailed him, speculation about his ambition and motivations, the partners dissecting his argument as if it were an ornate legal brief. He found himself standing in the break room, pouring a cup of coffee, while two associates nearby exchanged conspiratorial glances, their voices low but clearly tinged with incredulity. "Did you really think he could push them to change?" One scoffed, a remark that struck Marcus with the force of a physical blow. Such attitudes echoed the inner conflict he faced daily between his tangible aspiration for progress and the insidious doubt that threatened to reclaim him, but frustration spurred resolve. How many times had he held his tongue, relegating his thoughts to the shadows? He grasped the coffee cup tighter as clarity reframed his thoughts. He had dared to speak, and while the rhetoric felt heavy in their polished conference room, the undercurrents of change wouldn't simply vanish. How could he shift perspectives, ignite a movement within this staid institution, when walls were built on centuries of resistance? The mere idea troubled him, yet the flame of determination flickered bright inside him. He knew instinctively the importance of progress, how the ripple effects of true inclusion could not only alter individual experiences, but reshape the firm's ethos entirely. That evening, Marcus sat at his kitchen table with a notepad, poring over research and drafting a vision statement he could pitch to the partners, one that resonated with both their business priorities and the ethical imperatives he had unearthed during his advocacy. The culmination of his experiences, the stories of families like his grandmother's, fighting for acknowledgement in a cold world, became the crux of his strategy. "Maybe it's time to connect the dots," he whispered to himself. For weeks, he had been pulling together narratives of success through diversity, how firms that embraced varied perspectives outperformed their peers, not just morally, but financially. In those moments of focus, his restlessness transformed into a guiding light, peeling back layers of fear, illuminating paths unseen. Days morphed into weeks as Marcus organized panels, secured speakers, and drafted comprehensive proposals, each step carrying the weight of hope and defiance stitched into the fabric of his resolve. He arranged a presentation for the next pairing meeting, one that would show the firm that investing in diversity wasn't merely an ethical obligation, but a business necessity, underpinned by case after case of successful results. As he perfected his slides, his heart raced. He envisioned stepping back into that boardroom, where skepticism blended with curiosity, where he could present his vision as transformative rather than threatening. Preparations consumed him, but also peeled back the layers from within. He recognized how much his voice had matured, becoming imbued with a nuanced confidence that commanded attention. But as the meeting approached, doubts resurfaced. Would he be seen as just another faceless staff member pretending to punch above his weight? A call for change felt grand yet precarious. The confrontation with those entrenched mindsets loomed ahead, yet the crescendo of anticipation sparked a growing excitement in him. With the day upon him, Marcus adjusted his tie, the familiar wool fabric a grounding presence. He was prepared to advocate not just for himself, but for an entire generation yearning for recognition. The world he envisioned was tangible, yet the final step meant confronting the very antagonists whose beliefs governed the status quo. As he stepped into the boardroom, ready to speak once more, the pulse of anxiety thundered through him. The stakes had risen dramatically, and perhaps what he feared most was the acknowledgement that this venture could very well alter the course of his life, both personally and professionally. The moment had arrived, and yet, amid the tension, a shiver of questioning lingered. Would they let him rewrite their narrative, or was he merely setting himself up for another rejection? Marcus entered the boardroom, its polished oak table reflecting the overhead lights like a surface of glass, both intimidating and inviting. He took a deep breath, inhaling the stale air mixed with the scent of coffee, and found a space at the table where the whispers and glances could not envelop him. This time, he could control the narrative. He could practically hear the heartbeat of the room. The murmurs of skepticism, disguised as polite greetings from his colleagues, were merely cover for their disbelief. It reminded him of the high school debates he had once feared, where the stakes felt astronomically high. But there he had been just a kid, passionate yet uncertain. Now he stood as a man poised to challenge a system that felt uniformly impenetrable. The anticipated moment of silence fell. One by one, the partners took their seats, their expressions a mix of curiosity and concern. Marcus knew that this gathering would test not only his arguments, but his very identity. Would he stand as a change agent, or fade into the background? He cleared his throat, feeling the tremors of self-doubt. No more distracting fears. He had prepared, studied, and practiced relentlessly until the content felt like an extension of himself. As he clicked through his slides, citing case studies and poignant statistics that mapped the financial benefits of diverse teams, he could see eyes narrowing, brows furrowing, a tapestry of doubt unraveling, just as he had hoped. Diversity is not just a checkbox, he stated firmly, allowing his voice to resonate throughout the room. It's a cultural shift that requires commitment. When we elevate diverse perspectives within our firm, we elevate our potential for innovation and growth. Each word ignited something within him, a burgeoning confidence that surged like a tidal wave. He interwove stories of success from other firms, tales of how simple shifts in inclusion transformed workplace norms, spurred creative breakthroughs, and even led to exponential increases in client satisfaction. The partners exchanged glances. For a moment, he sensed the tide beginning to turn. Yet just as he was gaining momentum, the vice chairman, Mr. Wells, a known stalwart of tradition, leaned forward. His demeanor oozed skepticism, tension swirling around the room like an electric current. "Marcus, what you're suggesting seems noble, but can you provide us with solid evidence that such changes translate to real dollars? We are a business first, after all." The question was a dagger aimed at both his vision and his credibility. Marcus felt the heat rise to his cheeks, a mix of anger and determination. He'd done the research. He gathered the numbers, but mere facts would not quell the deep-seated beliefs that had been formed long before him. Instead of retreating into defensiveness, he chose defiance. With calmness that belied the storm brewing inside him, he replied, "What if I told you that a firm in our industry, which adopted a robust diversity initiative, recorded a 30% increase in profitability within 2 years? Wouldn't that make investing in inclusion a priority?" His voice was steady, breaking through their barriers, where doubt once ruled. He could feel them shifting slightly. The positioning of their bodies leaned in. It was as if he was beginning to plant seeds within their consciousness, the anxiety transforming into palpable curiosity. As he wrapped up his presentation, ending on a bold call to action that framed diversity as an essential pillar for reaching new heights, he felt a rush of exhilaration. His story was no longer just his own. It infused their shared narrative with urgency and possibility. But as applause washed over him, heavy and affirming, he recognized a new layer of conflict brewing within. Had he just begun a journey towards acceptance, or had he merely uncovered a new resistance that would demand relentless advocacy to challenge? The coming days would reveal the answer, a moment that hung delicately in balance, poised between potential transformation and inevitable backlash. And Marcus understood that while one meeting may plant the seeds of change, he would need to constantly cultivate that change or risk falling back into the shadows. As the partners began to talk among themselves, Marcus's heart raced. There was a shift in the air, uncertainty no longer the sole companion of his aspirations. But what he didn't know was that there were vested interests in the firm that would challenge his resolve more than he could anticipate. He had stepped into battle for a narrative that mattered, but at what cost? Marcus left the boardroom, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation coursing through him. The applause resonated in his ears, a chaotic blend of validation and anxiety. He had staked his claim, but the terrain ahead was fraught with challenges he hadn't yet been able to foresee. The stakes felt higher now. The weight of expectation settled upon him like a mantle he had not asked for. In the days following the presentation, the boardroom's lingering echoes transformed into a relentless cycle of anticipation and dread. His colleagues exchanged wary glances, and the undercurrents of change swirled around him like a tornado. Each whispered conversation left his stomach knotted. What were they saying behind closed doors? Had his words truly shifted the landscape, or was he simply a target for the defensive minds entrenched in conventional thought? The daily humdrum of office life felt punctuated by an urgency only he could feel. Every decision he made took on monumental significance. As he approached his desk, he could see his reflection in the glass walls, a determined figure with newfound purpose. But was it enough? Would pushing for diversity make him a leader or an outcast? Determined not to falter under the weight of these thoughts, he sought counsel from Maya, a junior analyst with a fierce reputation for championing change. He found her pacing outside the coffee machine, a resolute fire in her eyes. "You did it, Marcus," she said, glancing as he approached. "You planted a seed of hope, but I wonder, will they let it grow?" Her words resonated deep within him. Hope felt fragile, easily crushed under the right pressure. "I presented the facts, but I know they need to feel it for themselves," he replied, his voice low. "What if they just see me as a nuisance? What if I could lose this?" Maya put her hand on his arm, grounding him. "Change isn't a linear path. You'll face pushback. Just remember, every opposition is a chance to reinforce your resolve." There was a steely clarity in her gaze that kindled something in him, inspiring him to consider not just survival, but thriving within this turbulence. He realized he needed to build alliances. With greater influence, he could navigate the existing structures with more dexterity. But who to approach? The partners could be allies, but they were far more entrenched in their views than he'd ever imagined. Then there were the middle-tier managers, those who harbored aspirations, yet feared contesting the status quo. He needed to listen, understand their fears, and find common ground. This wouldn't be a solitary quest for change. It would require a coalition. As the days bled into one another, he pinpointed key individuals to engage with. Each conversation became a test of his persuasive powers. He began to craft a strategy, discussing initiatives that would enhance team efficacy alongside diversity. He invited them to see diversity not as a hindrance, but as an avenue to solve problems creatively and efficiently. Their responses varied. Some were receptive, wanting to hear more, but others recoiled at the mention of change that felt like an attack on their established successes. The pressure was mounting. One afternoon, he received a terse email from Mr. Wells, requesting a meeting to discuss the recent presentation's implications. Marcus could feel the shift in the air when he entered the room. There was an unsettling serenity about the vice-chairman. "Marcus," Mr. Wells started, his tone clipped, "you've ruffled a few feathers." Marcus steadied himself. "I appreciate your honesty, sir. I believe that's a necessary part of progress." Mr. Wells raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "You speak of progress, but what I see is disruption. We can't gamble our future on ideals. What makes you so certain this will succeed?" Marcus's heart raced. The time had come to face the core of his doubts and own his truth. "Because I believe that evolving our culture will yield dividends in creativity, revenue, and employee satisfaction. We can't afford not to adapt." Every word flowed from him, each moment a precarious balancing act between confidence and vulnerability. As the tension thickened, Marcus realized that he was navigating treacherous waters. One wrong word could send him overboard. But he also understood he could not retreat. He needed to stand firm or risk losing the very essence of the change he sought. And just as the conversation hung suspended, waiting for Mr. Wells' retort, Marcus readied himself for an acceptance or a firm rejection of his vision. He realized the true battle was not just against the opposition of others, but the threats that loomed within himself, his fears of not being enough, of failure. What transformation awaited him in this crucible? The only certainty now was the unfolding challenge he faced ahead. Would he thrive, or would he wither beneath the weight of expectation? Marcus sat in the aftermath of the meeting, the weight of Mr. Wells's scrutiny heavy on his chest. The silence had pressed upon him like a suffocating blanket. As the vice-chairman's words echoed in his mind, he wrestled with a tempest of doubt and resilience. Was he merely an idealist, pushing against the robust machinery of the firm? Or could he indeed steer it towards a thriving diversity-first approach? The next few days became a crucible for introspection. He dedicated time to reflect on the dynamics around him, observing how his colleagues operated, navigating their office routines with a blend of tension and ambition. He documented conversations, noting body language and the subtle cues that hinted at deeper-seated fears and hopes. Each data point became part of a larger narrative that could guide his approach. During this period, a significant realization surfaced. Marcus had been operating under the assumption that others shared his vision of change. But he needed to understand their reservations, the intricate weave of anxiety and ambition that tied them to the status quo. It wasn't about forcing change, it was about making them perceive it as an opportunity. There was a crucial meeting scheduled with the middle managers, a mixed crew of aspirations and trepidations. He felt certain that they could become the allies he needed, the front line of his movement. Engaging with them would require an astute blend of vulnerability and strategic persuasion. As he prepared for this encounter, he decided to base his presentation on the concept of unity through variety. He dug deep into the company's performance metrics, correlating diversity with improved results from companies similar to theirs. Stories of other organizations embracing change without losing their core identity became his foundation. These weren't lofty ideals. They were grounded in reality, concrete victories that beckoned the hesitant to consider transformation. On the day of the meeting, he arrived early, pacing outside the conference room as anxiety mingled with anticipation. When the time came, he entered with a serene confidence that masked the brewing storm inside him. The atmosphere in the room was disjointed, a mix of feigned interest and guarded skepticism. As he began, he noticed several faces illuminated with curiosity. He spoke candidly about his recent encounters with Mr. Wells and the broader implications of their current stagnation. With each statistic he shared, he watched the initial resistance soften. It was when he made a personal connection, revealing his own fears about pushing for this change, that he truly engaged them. He spoke of his childhood, of being told that he should aim lower, of battling the expectation to conform. In that moment, he knew he had struck a chord. Their expressions shifted, some nodding slowly as they presented their concerns, revealing fears of the unknown. Together, they began to unravel the enigma of change. Over the next hour, a silent agreement formed in the room. They recognized that individual efforts could weave into a powerful collective force. By the end of the meeting, there was a palpable energy of camaraderie. Thought's transformation rippled through them, shifting the dynamics from opposition to collaboration. However, Marcus knew this was merely the beginning. He walked away from the meeting, both invigorated and aware of the road ahead filled with potential pitfalls. The solidification of informal alliances began to take shape. Still, doubt lingered at the edges of his newfound clarity. Despite feeling more empowered, he felt the shadows of past rejections looming close. Would his growing network of supporters hold firm in the face of further challenges? As he pondered these questions, an email notification lit up his phone screen, a forwarding from Mr. Wells. The subject line sent ice coursing through him. Strategic Review Request. Next Steps on Diversity Initiative. Marcus took a deep breath, a mixture of dread and resolve welling within him. What awaited him in this next round? Would he hold his ground, or would he falter under the renewed scrutiny? The stakes had been raised, and he was about to confront the very embodiment of his fears. Marcus sat at his desk, the email from Mr. Wells still open on his screen. The words loomed over him like an impending storm, an ominous signal that this moment would mark a significant turning point in his journey. Nervously tapping his fingers against the wooden surface, he forced himself to breathe deeply. He needed clarity, not just for himself, but for the diverse initiative that he had so passionately advocated. The prospect of the strategic review felt intimidating, underlined by Mr. Wells's reputation for being sharp and unyielding. Marcus recognized that this was his chance to not just defend his vision, but to refine it. He couldn't merely present the statistics and anecdotes he had gathered. He had to convey passion, authenticity, and an unwavering belief that diversity was an intrinsic driver of innovation. He had to visualize a future where the company thrived by embracing differences, not resisting them. He grabbed a notepad and began mapping out his thoughts, refining his pitch with urgency. The core message had to resonate on both emotional and rational levels. He set aside the numbers momentarily to focus on storytelling. This was about more than data. This was about lives, experiences, and the unique perspectives that fueled creativity. Each narrative could act as a bridge, connecting the rigid structural support of the company to the fluid, dynamic potential of its people. As he worked through the evening, a revelation accelerated his mental process. His success hinged on creating a sense of trust. He realized he needed to persuade Mr. Wells to see his vision as a shared goal rather than an imposition. To do so, he needed to appeal to Wells's motivation as a businessman, while also tapping into his underlying values as a leader. The night wore on, the cool glow of his laptop spilling light onto pages filled with notes and drawings. This fight was his own personal crusade, and if he succeeded, it wasn't just a win for him. It would benefit hundreds, if not thousands, of individuals within the company, offering them a sense of belonging and purpose. As the clock struck midnight, Marcus's resolve crystallized. He composed a succinct email to Mr. Wells, expressing his eagerness to participate in the strategic review, emphasizing that he was ready to not only present findings, but actively engage in the conversation. With a click, he sent the message into the ether, instantly feeling a release of pent-up tension. Time would reveal whether his approach would be met with understanding or resistance. Yet beneath it all, a resolve thrummed within him. He wouldn't merely be a messenger, but a catalyst for change. The next day dragged on as he awaited a response, each tick of the clock amplifying his anxiety. His mind raced with possibilities and scenarios. Would Mr. Wells find common ground, or would he dismiss Marcus's vision as an impractical endeavor? Then he received a ping, a reply from Mr. Wells that sent a jolt of cold dread down his spine. "Let's meet tomorrow morning to discuss the review," it read. Marcus's heart raced. The time had come to face the critical evaluation of his initiative. Would he be able to articulate his vision effectively, or would he stumble under the weight of scrutiny? Tomorrow would demand everything he had learned thus far, and more. He resolved to not shy away from the confrontation, knowing fully that the stakes were higher than ever before. In that moment of clarity, he made a choice. He would stand his ground and articulate his belief in the opportunity they had in front of them. As he prepared for the upcoming meeting, one thought pierced through the haze of anxiety. The time had come to face Mr. Wells, and with it, the truth of his own convictions. Was he ready to advocate for a future that was ambitious enough to be transformative? The morning arrived too soon, each ray of sunlight casting elongated shadows that mirrored Marcus's internal turmoil. As he dressed, he scrutinized his reflection. The suit was sharp, but would it imbue him with the confidence he so desperately needed? He wrestled with the tension coiling in his stomach. This meeting could either launch his initiative or bury it beneath Mr. Wells's skepticism. Arriving at the office, the ambient hum of conversations and clattering keyboards juxtaposed harshly against his internal silence. He walked through the hallways, noticing how the world around him seemed to move in sync, while he felt suspended in a bubble of anticipatory dread. The air was thick, and his surroundings blurred as he rehearsed his pitch over and over in his mind. The conference room loomed ahead, an arena where ideas would clash. As Marcus entered, he spotted Mr. Wells, seated at the head of the table, his demeanor sharp but watchful. For a moment, Marcus felt like a contestant on a reality show, with each glance from the executives piercing through him. He stood at the entrance, swallowing back the rising tide of anxiety. "Marcus, glad you could join us," Mr. Wells said, his voice rippling through the room like a current, demanding attention. "Let's get started." Marcus took a deep breath, steadied himself, and proceeded to deliver his carefully crafted presentation, weaving in stories that casual observers and data might miss. He highlighted the narratives of individuals whose lives had been touched by inclusivity, whose skills had flourished because they felt seen and valued. At times, he caught Mr. Wells's eye, searching for any sign of resonance, any indication that he was striking the right chord. Yet just as he felt momentum building, a question pierced his concentration. "But how will this translate to measurable outcomes, Marcus? Can you guarantee this will enhance our bottom line?" Mr. Wells's expression remained impassive, a mask obscuring any reflection of underlying thoughts. In an instant, Marcus's mind raced through strategies that could resonate with Mr. Wells's desires for tangible results. "Yes, Mr. Wells, I can see how that would be a critical factor for you," he acknowledged, recalibrating his approach. "Studies have shown that organizations embracing diverse perspectives yield higher creativity, which directly correlates with improved innovation. More innovation ultimately leads to stronger market competitive positioning." He felt his footing gaining, but doubt began to creep back in as he continued, looking for ways to anchor the conversation. The deeper he delved into the implications, the more he sensed a barrier take shape, a resistance that felt almost palpable as he drummed up the courage to challenge it. "I understand that the status quo has yielded profitable results," Marcus pressed forward, heart pounding, "but I urge you to consider the risk of stagnation. Our industry is evolving rapidly, and we must adapt. Embracing diversity isn't merely a trend, it's a necessity for sustainable success. Imagine a team infused with varied perspectives, driving innovative solutions." Marcus felt a change in the room, the air thickening with tension. Mr. Wells's brow furrowed, his gaze piercing as if evaluating Marcus's very essence. Would he view this as an insurrection or an inspiration? Silence enveloped them. It was the calm before the storm of response. He could almost palpably feel the stakes rising. Would he have the clarity to navigate this moment, or would he falter, allowing the fear of judgment to constrain the very dialogue he sought to foster? Then Mr. Wells leaned back, a measured look crossing his face. "You make some compelling arguments, Marcus. But I still wonder, what if we don't see the results we need?" The question sank like a stone, reverberating through the silence. In that moment of vulnerability, amidst a swirl of uncertainty, Marcus realized he stood at a precipice of self-discovery. The stakes hadn't just been about the company, they were about his own courage and belief in the future he envisioned. "Perhaps that's where the real challenge lies," Marcus replied carefully, feeling a surge of determination. "It's not about guarantees, but rather the willingness to explore uncharted waters. I can't promise you it will be easy, but I can promise you that it will be transformative. He sensed a ripple move through the room, a shift in the collective mindset. Would this lead to an opening or close the door on his aspirations? The air felt electric, heavy with unasked questions. What lay ahead was unclear, yet as uncertainty swirled around him, one thought anchored through it. This was not just a professional battle, it was a deeper battle of values. He steeled himself, ready for whatever came next. Yet deep down, one truth pulsated. What he truly fought for was more than an initiative. It was the courage to redefine success itself. But would Mr. Wells see this transformation as an opportunity or as a threat? The air shifted sharply as silence enveloped the room, settling heavily on Marcus's shoulders. The moment felt infinite, each heartbeat a chilling reminder of the stakes at hand. He had crossed an invisible line, challenging not only Mr. Wells's authority, but also the very foundation of the company's traditional values. Gradually, Mr. Wells's expression morphed, the weight of his gaze amplifying the tension. Was he assessing guilt or bravery? The uncertainty gnawed at Marcus. What if the risk he took was deemed reckless rather than visionary? To speak of transformation when the company thrived in its comfort zone felt like walking a tightrope. But wasn't growth impossible without challenge? "I appreciate your passion, Marcus," Mr. Wells replied at last, his tone indecipherable. "But passion alone doesn't drive results." The words echoed in Marcus's mind, a challenge that ignited something deep within him. "It's true, Mr. Wells, but, as I've demonstrated, there exists a correlation between passion and innovation, a spark that can ignite change. If we don't leverage it, we risk becoming obsolete in a rapidly evolving market." In that moment, Marcus realized that he had little to lose and so much to gain. He pushed through the barrier of uncertainty, drawing on the stories he had gathered, tales of colleagues whose careers transformed through unexpected doors that opened because of a single, forward-thinking initiative. "Yes, I understand the financial implications," he continued, his voice steadying. "But imagine a company recognized not just for profits, but for being a leader in creativity and diversity. A place where employees want to work not just because of a paycheck, but due to a culture that values all voices, that has the potential to create consumers who feel deeply connected to our brand. Loyalty doesn't stem only from transactions. It arises from shared values." Marcus could feel the room's energy shifting again, like the air before the storm of a brewing possibility. He saw a flicker of intrigue in some eyes around the table. The executives, in whom he sensed the weight of apprehension, were now leaning slightly forward, eager to explore his vision. And yet the ghost of doubt lingered in the back of his mind, doubt reinforced by years of tempered expectations. Had he merely deluded himself into believing that his ideas, his very essence, could spur such a monumental change? The thought bounced within him, twirling like a storm. But this was the crux of it. Over the years, he had formulated strict assumptions about his own limits and what he could offer. If he wanted this initiative to flourish, he needed to confront those limits head-on. A sense of clarity began to envelop him. Perhaps this meeting wasn't only about Mr. Wells's approval, it was about the acceptance of his own worth as an innovator. He laid bare his ambition, speaking not just with logic, but with fervor. "Let's create a pilot program that tests these hypotheses. We can measure outcomes on a small scale first, mitigate risk while paving the way for profound change." His words hung in the air, and he steeled himself for resistance. Instead, he saw Mr. Wells's posture relax slightly, which sparked a glimmer of hope within Marcus. Could the tide be turning? "That's an interesting approach," Mr. Wells remarked. "I suppose we could entertain a trial, but let's be clear. If this fails, it'll be on you." A wave of relief washed over him, though it was accompanied by a fresh wave of pressure. He took a deep breath, the taste of the challenge now exhilarating rather than suffocating. "I'm ready to make this work, sir. This isn't just an initiative to me. It's a chance to build a legacy. As the conversation unfolded, Marcus emerged from the cocoon of uncertainty he had been wrapped in for so long. Each word he spoke was an assertion of his purpose, chipping away at the stone of self-doubt that had held him back. He could feel the undercurrents of challenge morphing into a tide of possibility. He was not alone in this endeavor. With each passing moment, each nod of acknowledgement, he felt more equipped for the uphill climb ahead. He may not have emerged victorious just yet, but the seeds of transformation were planted. As the meeting began to wrap up, Marcus sensed his footing still shaky, yet bolstered by the initial acceptance of his ideas. But would the next steps be as congenial, or would they throw him right back into the chasm of skepticism? Marcus knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning of a wild journey of growth. What awaited him beyond the calm surface of approval was the real test of his resolve, and with his heart racing, he prepared for the unforeseen challenges ahead. The days following the strategic review meeting with Mr. Wells were filled with a palpable sense of uncertainty, yet Marcus felt an unmistakable shift within himself. He was no longer just the janitor. He was becoming a pivotal figure in a conversation that mattered. That moment of acceptance, the offer to pilot his diversity initiative, served as a launching pad for his burgeoning confidence. This was a turning point. He finally recognized his potential to influence real change. Marcus today possessed a clarity that came from confronting and overcoming his fears. He became an active participant in the firm's evolution, rather than a passive observer. The walls of doubt that had enclosed him were beginning to crumble, replaced by a newfound assurance. He meticulously prepared for the launch of the initiative, following up with colleagues, securing their buy-in, and crafting a structured plan for the trial program occupied his focus and energy. One afternoon, as he made his way through the office, he felt a wave of recognition wash over him. Colleagues engaged him differently, with respect and curiosity rather than the dismissive glances of the past. He realized he was now seen as someone with valuable insights, not just a janitor but a leader. Each interaction buoyed his spirits, reinforcing the notion that progress was achievable. As the pilot program began, he looked closely at everything, from participation rates to qualitative feedback. The momentum built as he witnessed palpable shifts within team dynamics. Employees opened up about their experiences, enriching discussions around divergent perspectives. Marcus facilitated workshops and initiatives that spotlighted voices previously marginalized. His passion for advocacy transformed not only the firm's culture, but reignited a collective purpose that transcended titles and positions. After several weeks, a follow-up meeting was scheduled with the partners to review the preliminary outcomes. The nervous anticipation swirled in his gut, a familiar anxiety creeping back. Yet this time it felt different. He had concrete data to back his claims: improved camaraderie, increased innovation in client strategies, and most importantly, individual testimonies reflecting the positive atmosphere he had helped cultivate. Standing before the table of partners again, he took a moment to breathe. The once intimidating mahogany surface now appeared as a foundation for collaboration rather than scrutiny. He articulated the findings of the pilot program, illuminating thriving examples of collaboration and innovation that emerged directly from diverse perspectives. This isn't just a series of statistics. It's about us as a firm, Marcus declared, employing the same authenticity he built within himself. This initiative can be the cornerstone of our future. Imagine being leaders in this space, setting a standard for inclusivity and creativity in the legal field. Clients seek not just our expertise, but a commitment to ethical representation. As he spoke, he noticed Mr. Wells shifting, the vice chairman encouraged by the results. The partners began to nod along in agreement, visibly acknowledging the transformation taking root through the initiative. It felt surreal. The fear of rejection he once harbored had evolved into a confidence rooted in evidence and passion. "We must not only embrace this change, we must champion it," Marcus concluded, his heart pounding with anticipation. "Let's take this beyond a pilot. Let's integrate it into our core ethos. Together, we can redefine what success looks like." The room erupted in discussion, an energy of acceptance and ambition filling the air. To see people, once disinclined to consider his ideas, eagerly exchanging thoughts on expansion, made Marcus realize how resilient his dreams had begun to take shape. In the weeks that followed, the initial pilot transformed into a comprehensive diversity initiative. The firm embraced it as part of their operational strategy. Marcus had not only impacted policy, but had redirected the narrative surrounding inclusion within the legal community. His once muted dreams were now recognized. He was firmly embedded in conversations where strategies were crafted and visions realized. Thus the journey Marcus embarked on, driven by resilience, informed by the wisdom of his grandmother, and fueled by the desire to fight for justice, culminated in a profound transformation for everyone involved. His professional conflict resolved, he was appointed as the Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator, solidifying his contribution to the firm's future. This recognition validated his growth, reflecting his evolution from the shadows into the spotlight. Reflecting on this journey, Marcus felt solid confidence coursing through him, a man redefined by conviction and a belief in the power of diverse voices. He had accomplished not just for himself, but for countless others who aspired to overcome barriers. He now understood that true transformation stemmed from the courage to advocate for change, and that change rippled far beyond the individual. As the new initiatives unfolded, Marcus celebrated with his family, sharing the pride they felt as they witnessed him reclaim his narrative. It was not merely the title or recognition that satisfied him, but the understanding that he had championed a legacy that would endure. That sense of personal achievement permeated his being, igniting a passion for continuous growth that wouldn't be extinguished. Each step he took, grounded in purpose and fortified by newfound respect, propelled him forward into unknown but promising territory. The journey wasn't over. It had merely evolved. This was Marcus's moment. He had fought, conquered his doubts, and transformed ambition into tangible change. As he looked ahead to a horizon of possibilities, he felt a drive to pursue further achievements, unlocking futures not just for himself, but for all those inspired to join in the journey ahead. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.